Daniela Detommaso, thank you very much for being here with me today. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yes, I'm excited to have you here, and I think we both know why you're here today. There's obviously been a lot of buzz within the GTA and what's happening with these fraudsters, selling homeowners homes right under their noses. And I guess really the first question is how are these fraudsters able to do this?
Yeah, it seems really inconceivable. And what's been most astounding to me during this whole process is really seeing how unaware people are. Like, I think up until now, most people didn't even realize that this is something that could actually happen because it's something that shouldn't happen. And yet we are seeing fraud in different degrees. So I would say that up until the last few years, most of the fraud that we saw were where people were actually committing fraud for shelter. So you would commit fraud where you were the actual homeowner, but you might falsify some of your income documents to qualify for a higher mortgage. But it was really the person who owned that property.
Right.
Then we've always seen mortgage fraud, where somebody else puts a mortgage on your property and absconds with the funds. And what we're seeing with more severity and frequency is title fraud, where, as you mentioned, somebody literally will sell your home. And the way that they do this is, I think there are a variety of factors that are contributing to this. One is the fact that we live out loud. So people are much more aware of, where we are. We post on social media. We might post that we're working abroad now as, hybrid work arrangements become more common. There are people that will display to the whole world that they're now working in another country for 6 months. We have absentee owners, we have Airbnbs, we have more short-term rentals that are a possibility. And what happens is people will, go on the internet and they will find properties, they will determine that they're being rented. Sometimes it's the people that are actually renting the properties. They will then often do a title search. Anyone can do a title search on your property if you pay a fee to do that. They obtain the owner's name. And then what they'll do is they'll get copies of ID. It'll have all the accurate information on it, but it'll have the fraudster's picture on it. And that is the start of the process. Then they engage with a realtor. They will list the property typically at prices that might be slightly under market to make them more attractive and to
Right.
encourage a quicker sale. And then by the time, anyone becomes aware of this, the property has already been sold.
Right. So you touched on something important there, which I think a lot of people do. And look, I'm guilty of it as well, too, is, hey, I'm going to Mexico, or hey, I'm going down to Jamaica. So you're saying that is sometimes what these fraudsters are looking for, people who are on vacation. And I guess it may be easier where these properties are vacant for the person that's going to purchase the property to be able to go in there, take a look and say, yes, I want this home. Is that an accurate assessment?
That's one factor for sure. You hit on another one, absentee owners. So people that have investment properties. So they own a home, but they don't live there. They may be living in another country. And again, they do tend to target properties that don't have mortgages on them. That would be something that's obviously easier to deal with because you don't have to discharge the mortgage. And absolutely, the whole digital and virtual nature of the way we live is a breeding ground for more fraud. We don't have that same intimacy with the people that we deal with. Often the first time you meet a lawyer is when you're walking into the office to sign documents. As a realtor,
Right.
you don't often know the people you're dealing with until you meet with them for that transaction. So we don't live in, these small communities where everybody knows anybody or
Right.
everybody in.
Yeah, that's true. It is a new world that we live in, the digital world as well, too. So we know what they're doing and how they're doing it. How do you protect yourself?
I think there are a few ways. The one way is to make sure that you keep your personal information personal. Again, we are a society that tends to overshare. So how do we safeguard against that and make sure that we're keeping our identification personal? If you do have a property that you're renting, make sure that your tax bills and any other identifiable documentation is coming to your home, not your rental property. If you're not living in the home, be certain that you're going by. If you're in another country and you're absent, make sure you have friends or family that are driving by the property to make sure there's not a for sale sign on it. Every once in a while, search your property. Keep on top of your credit bureau. You may want to check that to make sure that there aren't any inquiries there that look suspicious. And I think it's just as a general comment, keep your personal and private information private. The reality, though, is even if you do everything right, sometimes you can't prevent this because, again, this is very organized. It's very sophisticated. As soon as these fraudsters learn about some of the things that we're doing as the public to avoid this, they change the game. And of course, one of the things that's always important in the event that this cannot be avoided is getting title insurance. Obviously, I work for a title insurance company. I have a bias, but the role we play is so important because we're not just there to protect you in the event that there is a loss, but we are there to prevent losses. We don't want these frauds to happen because at the end of the day, where we're insuring the property, we're on the hook for this loss. And an important and vital role that we play is reviewing the documentation, reviewing the title. We're an extra set of eyes for the realtor, for the lawyer, for all the professionals in the transaction. And we prevent a lot of these frauds from occurring.
Right. Now, we know that title insurance is obviously a good way to protect yourself. And with everything that's happened over the last couple of months, where there's been obviously a bit of a buzz around it, is there been any improvements? Has there been anything that First Canadian Title have done to, maybe see if they can shut the door on these fraudsters so that, it makes it more difficult for them to get away with this?
Yeah, I wish we could shut the door on them, but the reality is we can't. What we can do is make sure that as a title company, we're leveraging all the tools that are available to us to, check identification. We have access to applications and software that allows us to perform more than just a visual scan of ID. Normally, you look at identification, the human eye often can't pick up on some of those nuances, whether they're the watermarks, whether they're the way that the photo was photoshopped onto identification. We can't read chips yet. And so, FCT has the ability to leverage third-party technology that can read, a chip on a passport to make sure that the information matches what's being displayed. So we're doing more and more of that for sure, and continuing to evolve. We're working with our industry partners, like lawyers, like realtors, to make sure that we're working as a community to try to prevent these frauds. We're asking more questions. Sometimes that may seem inconvenient, but there's a method to what we're doing. We had a situation, again, not too long ago, where we refused to insure a file. We actually had raised this as a potential fraud. And unfortunately, in that instance, the transaction still proceeded. And a few months later, we were notified by some of the parties that it was indeed a fraud. And unfortunately, now it's a situation where there would be a loss to that mortgage lender, and they are without title insurance. So again, I think we play a role both in preventing it through our certified fraud underwriters. We have two of the only certified title fraud underwriters in the country, and prevention is first and foremost on our mind. And then in the event that there is a fraud, we will protect you. I'm hoping that awareness is increased, and that's why I'm so grateful for these opportunities to talk about this, because just raising the awareness that people become a bit more mindful of, again, information they share around the securing and safeguarding their identification, protecting their homes, and also potentially moving the dial on some of the due diligence that's required. Right now, again, as a realtor, you have to look at one piece of ID. Is that sufficient? I don't know, but I think if there is any doubt, follow your gut, ask for an additional piece of identification, and hopefully leverage some of the tools that are available in market.
Right. Now, you touched on something there where you said that, we've been able to stop a couple of these things happening. Is this, and especially in this new digital world and technologically advanced world that we live in, is this being done manually by people at FCT, or is there automation now in place for this stuff? And do you see that maybe coming down the pipeline if it isn't?
Yeah, there's both. So we rely on both. We rely on people, technology, and process. So having been in this business for over 30 years, again, fraud is not new. It's evolving and it's changing, but it's not new to us. So we rely on our people as the first line of defense. They are able to identify any suspicious activity. Again, they're experts in this area. Then we also leverage automation. So we have third-party software applications that we use so that they actually corroborate our suspicions or actually confirm that the identification is fine. So we talk to our partners. It's certainly an ecosystem. We don't rely on a single method. There are flags that we've identified that obviously we don't want to share because we don't want the fraudsters to become aware of them, but there are certain things that we pick up on now as trends. And then we supplement our own individual underwriting through technology. And I think that will become more and more common for sure.
Okay, great. Okay, so somebody's listening to this and they say, okay, you know what? I don't have title insurance. I should probably get it. How much does it cost? Like, is this monthly? Is it a one-time fee? And how much?
So again, this is one of the things that's always so shocking to people when I've been having conversations around this issue, is that unlike normal home insurance that you pay on a regular basis for as long as you're in your home, title insurance is actually a one-time premium that lasts for as long as you own your property. And not only does it last as long as you own your property, if you transfer your property through your will to a next of kin in certain circumstances, the coverage continues. So it is a one-time premium, and it is tied to the value of your home. So depending on the value of your home, the property, the price changes. But we're talking hundreds of dollars. Like, it is really a nominal amount, given the protection that it affords, because it's not just about fraud. Fraud is one of 34 coverages that we provide to homeowners. So for, again, a one-time fee that lasts as long as you own your home, I think everyone should have this.
Yeah.
And for those that don't have it, because we've only been here in Canada for just over 30 years, and many people didn't know about title insurance when they bought their homes. We created what we call an existing homeowner policy. So you can purchase title insurance at any time during the course of your ownership. If you go on our website, fct.ca, there's an opportunity to order there. If you speak to your lawyer, you can order through your lawyer. And certainly we encourage you to speak to your lawyer and get all the information that you need, to your realtor. And you can also call FCT directly, and we'd be more than happy to help give you whatever information you need and answer your questions.
Yeah, and that's great advice as well, too, because some people may they may not even know where their purchase and sales agreement is. So they're looking for it, or the documents that they get from the lawyers at closing, and they're like, I don't know where these papers are. Do I even have title insurance? Where can they go to find out if they do or don't have title insurance? Do they just go back to their lawyers, or how do they find this out?
Yeah, so there are a variety of ways. Certainly, we would encourage you to speak to your lawyer. You have a relationship with your lawyer, and they're our partners. So you could call your lawyer and get a copy of your file, or just ask them. Otherwise, we can do a search for you. So if owners call us, we're more than happy to search our database to determine if FCT issued a policy.
Got it. Now, is there more than just the one insurer? Because there's obviously First Canadian Title. Are there other ones? And is there a difference between the different title insurance companies in Canada? And also, too, do they go across North America? Are there different ones in the US?
For sure. We are the only title insurer in Canada. No, we're not. I wish I could say that, but we're not. And so there are other title companies here in Canada. And again, we all do a really good job at working together as an industry to focus on the prevention of fraud and protection of our customers. I always say, you don't judge a title company by the claims that we make, but by the claims that we pay. And that's when really, the value of the title company comes into play, when you can see how we handle claims and help our insureds at the time when they need the most help, the most handholding. So there are other title insurance companies in Canada. In North America, when you talk about the United States, I think the first title company in the US was set up in 1853 or something near that. So it's been around there for a long time, over 170 years, I think. And in Canada, over 30 years, there's been an active presence of title companies here. And it is becoming more and more commonplace. In Ontario, you will rarely find a lawyer that does not recommend title insurance to their customers. There is, I believe, the widespread belief that it provides an extra layer of protection. Lawyers do a great job. And even if they do absolutely everything right, which most of them do, there still is a risk. So I think most real estate lawyers will recommend title insurance to their customers. But again, if that wasn't done for whatever reason, we're happy to support and help you.
Got it. Okay, that's good to know. Now, let's kind of go through a scenario. Let's say now the homeowner or the seller has title insurance, the fraudster comes in and does what they do so well. And now I am the buyer, and I come in and I unexpectedly don't even realize that this is being done. But I also have title insurance now as well too. What happens at closing? Who gets the home? How do you go through that scenario?
Yeah, so in that scenario, again, I'm going to give you general comments because it is insurance. It's so nuanced.
Yeah.
But normally the deal will have already happened, so the closing will have occurred, and then it's post-closing that now you uncover that there's been a fraud. At that point, if both parties are insured, that is actually the best case scenario for the parties involved. In that situation, in rare instances, but I'll give you again a general comment, the innocent purchaser gets to keep the property. Sorry, the innocent purchaser is out of luck in Ontario.
So the innocent purchaser. Okay, so the buyer is out of luck.
So the buyer is out of luck in terms of the property. And the reason I actually just did an interview in BC, and in BC, interestingly enough, it's the complete opposite of Ontario. But in Ontario, what happens is the person that owns the home gets to keep the home. And again, these are general rules. The person that has bought the home, if by chance they turn around and flip it really quickly to another innocent homeowner, that is an exception, then they would keep the home. But otherwise, the innocent purchaser is out of luck. If they have title insurance, we will indemnify them for that financial loss. So we will provide an indemnity. If they don't have title insurance, they are literally out of luck.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So listen, anybody that's listening to this, make sure you get title insurance. All right. I think very important. Now, you touched on something though. You're saying that you just did an interview out in Vancouver, and you're saying it's the opposite. So out there, you're saying the purchaser, the new buyer, actually gets to keep the home?
That's right.
Interesting. So where is that mandated? Is that at a federal level? Well, no, I guess it'd be a provincial level.
Yeah, it's both through their the way their land title system works, and also through the way that the common law evolves. So there's case law where, in that instance, thankfully, the innocent homeowner that loses their home, they do have access both to the LTSA, which is their land title and survey authority, and their land assurance fund. So they would be able to make a claim to those funds and get monetary compensation for their loss. But again, even there, if you don't have title insurance, you will eventually, hopefully, have access to monetary compensation for your loss. But you have to go through that entire process. So you have to hire lawyers. You have to recover from the shock of this event, figure out what to do, and then navigate that process on your own. If you have title insurance, we actually step into your shoes and we take care of that entire process. We hire the lawyers, we notify the investigators, we engage with the police. We literally hold your hand and we take on all of that process ourselves. And that process is what we call our duty to defend. Whatever amount of money that we spend doesn't take away from the amount of money that you're indemnified for. So your payment doesn't decrease by the amount we spend to defend your title. And that's really important, because obviously it's important to get your value back, but having someone to just walk through this process with you and the peace of mind that that brings, I don't think you can put a value on that.
Right. No, you can't, for sure. Now, I do want to switch gears a little bit, because we do work with like a lot of real estate investors. And before I do, one of the things that when you're buying or you're selling a home, because I'm a realtor, and a lot of times you'll put into the purchase and sales agreement a survey. Now, I'll say 90% of the times people don't have their survey. How does title insurance protect against that? Because I know you said that there's more than just what title insurance covers just from fraudsters, but there's obviously surveys, encroachments. How does that stuff work? Can you kind of walk us through that?
That is such a great question. And I'm really glad you asked it, because funny enough, that is actually how we started to gain awareness and presence in Canada, through our survey coverage. So it's a real core coverage of our policy. And again, effectively, what we indemnify against is any defects that would have been revealed by an up-to-date survey. So as you mentioned, often people don't have a survey when they purchase a property, and there's a cost to that. And again, I always recommend that if somebody intends on putting in a pool or wanting to do something specific with their property, they should get a survey. It's important because we don't guarantee that you'll be able to do certain things with your property. We indemnify you in the event that the survey reveals a defect that you weren't aware of. So if there is a survey there's not a survey and there's a defect revealed after the fact, we would indemnify you for that loss. Again, you have to, the facts are very important and every case is different, but that is the general coverage, is any defect that would have been revealed by an up-to-date survey. If you suffer a loss because of that, we would indemnify you for that loss.
Now, I'm trying to go back now to when I took my real estate license, which was a while ago. And I remember, I'm trying to remember what it's called again now, where it's, let's say now for over 20 years has elapsed. The phrase is escaping me right now, where they've been using that part of the land for over 20 years. Is there something there that protects that? I can't remember what it's called again now, where it's
Adverse
an
possession.
it's almost an encroachment, but they've been using it for so
almost
long.
Like a squatter or adverse
there you
possession,
go, squatter.
where you've been using the
that's
property.
the word I'm looking for, squatter.
Yeah.
How does that work? Because then now you're getting into the law, correct?
Yeah. So depending on, again, the land title system, certain land title systems don't recognize what we call adverse possession, or that person has a right to that property. But let's say they're arguing against you and they're saying, no, I've been using this laneway for the past however long, and it's how I get to my garage, and now basically it's my property. We would step in. So if this was a case where you were saying, no, that's my property, and then we discover, yes, had this person had a survey, they would have determined that there was an encroachment, then we would have to defend you. In the event, let's say that for whatever reason, and it's always hard to give straight answers. I'm not trying to avoid the answer. It just really depends on the facts.
Right.
Let's say it was determined that that person did have a right to that property. We would have to pay you any diminution in value as a result of that. So let's say now you thought you owned that land, you don't, and there's a diminution in the value of your property. That would be a claim that you would make to the title insurer. Or the more likely scenario is we would help you get that property back. If there was an encroachment, either of someone else's property onto yours or your property onto their property.
Right. That actually brings me to another question as well, too, especially with surveys. Do you sometimes have surveys on files? Or no, you guys don't keep records of that?
We definitely, yeah, no, we generally don't. We will, if there is a survey, we definitely will ask for it and we will want to review it, because then it gives us information.
Sure.
Again, once we know of a problem, then we have to deal with it. And oftentimes, this is the other thing, you know, it's not just about problems we don't know about. There are sometimes defects that we will insure over. So we sometimes look at properties as an example that have old private mortgages that we know have been paid out, but that technically that person should get discharged before they can deal with the property. We may insure over those things so that the closing can happen. So it's not just about defects that are unknown. We sometimes have the ability to look at either a survey or a title and help people make that deal close by insuring over those things and then offering to provide another policy when that property is eventually sold.
Right. Okay. So now switching gears now into rental properties. What if, you know, I'm an investor and I've got several investment properties? Do I need title insurance for every single property, or is there any kind of like an umbrella, title insurance program out there or package that you can get?
Yeah, that again, another great question. We actually insure by title. So if the properties are separate properties, because again, all of our work is in looking at that parcel of land and looking at the search to determine if there are any defects or any issues with that. So it is absolutely property specific. So, we will insure multiple properties within the transaction. We provide title insurance to commercial customers who are insuring or acquiring large portfolios of properties. We definitely engage in all of that work, all of that underwriting. So we have a large commercial part of our business where title insurance is provided.
Got it. Now, what about, because a lot of the investors that we work with, the first couple of properties that we purchase, sometimes it's in their own personal names. However, they start to get more sophisticated. And then now they reach out to their accountants and their lawyers, and now they start to purchase properties not in their own names, but now in corporations. Is there a difference there? Does the fee structure change? How does that work? And can they still get title insurance in a corporation?
Absolutely. So again, our commercial department deals largely with corporate entities that are acquiring, we when the Rogers Center was purchased, we were on that transaction. So just to give you an indication of the size and scale, we participate in all sorts of commercial transactions, from multinational across the country properties to a single small company that's buying a piece of land or a unit. So there's no limitation there in terms of where we can play and the coverage that we provide. And even if it is in a corporate name, that's no problem at all. The policies are different and the pricing does vary. But again, it is very, very site specific and property specific.
Got it. Now, again, as investors grow, sometimes they get into now wanting to sever lots. And now they want to do subdivisions. Or like, how does that work? Because now you're actually changing the original landscape, not really the landscape, but what that property was originally used for. And now you've got different lots. How does that work? Do you have to get the title insurance for each of these new?
Yeah. So normally
lots?
what would happen is we would insure the land. So at the development stage, when the land was being purchased, for example, we will often insure that development. And then as the homes or units are constructed and eventually sold off, the purchaser of those individual units will then get title insurance for themselves. So the landowner or developer would get title insurance on the parcel of land as they construct these homes and then sell them off individually. The purchaser of each of those homes would then purchase title insurance for themselves.
Got it. So originally you get title insurance for that large plot of land. They sever it, but even during the sever, you still have title insurance for the whole entire plot of land until a new owner comes in for that new piece of land that they've purchased, or whatever they decide to do with it, if it's a condo or a house, townhouse, whatever it may be. Got it.
And the way, just to add a small nuance there, the way title insurance works is most of our coverages are retrospective. So from the date of policy, which is normally the day that you buy your home, we cover everything that happened before that date. So again, if the person that you bought from had an outstanding work order that wasn't discovered, and now all of a sudden, you find out that the weekend warrior that did the beautiful renos in your home did so without a building permit, and now there are challenges for you, we actually cover those things. But things that you do with your land after the fact, we wouldn't cover. So if now all of a sudden you build a cabana and it's on your owner's property, that's something that you created. So we would not cover that. So even in that land example, we cover that landowner from the time they buy the property. What they do with the property after that would not be covered, right? Because now you're creating that yourself.
Got it. So you're saying, because one of the things right now, especially like with Bill 23, right, and they're obviously working through it. I've got a house. I decide now I want to build a garden suite. You're saying that would not be covered if I'm building like a whole new entity or another property on that plot of land for higher and best use.
Yeah. So again, because you're actually creating that yourself, if you're not following the rules. So if you're building that without a building permit, those are what we call post-policy coverages. And those things we couldn't cover, right? Because again, if you're actually going out and putting your garden house you're not respecting any setback requirements, or you're doing that without a permit when a permit was required, then you're creating your own loss. And we can't cover that. There are certain things like fraud and forgery. So again, fraud and forgery happens after you buy your property. Certain encroachments we do cover post policy as well. But as a general rule, we're trying to protect you from things that somebody else did that now affect you. But we can't protect you from losses that you're creating yourself.
Got it. That makes sense. Yeah. So if you're going through the city and you're, going through the bylaw channels and you're doing everything to code, you're protected. Does that increase the cost of title insurance, or no? That's still the same. Doesn't matter.
No, because if you think about it, it's a snapshot in time. So what we do is at the time you buy your property, we've looked at the title search. You're covered for everything from the, assuming it's covered by the policy from that day backwards, other than certain things that happen in the future, like fraud or forgery, which that, if it happens at any time during your ownership. In the scenario you mentioned where you're making improvements to your property, what happens is when you sell your property, the person that, again, is buying your property, they would get title insurance and they'd be protected from anything that you might have done that now is going to result in a loss to them, where they find out you didn't do things properly. They didn't know about that when they bought the home. And if they make a claim and it's a covered title risk, we would protect them. So we're always trying to protect people from other people, but we can't protect you from yourself. If you're doing things that cause your loss, then I think it makes sense that we wouldn't be on the hook for that.
Got it. And so that brings another important question then as well, is that, so now you're protecting me because I was unaware that the previous owner of that house that I bought did things illegally. Do you then go after that previous homeowner, or is that just a wash? You guys cover it and that's it?
So again, that's where the concept of subrogation steps in. So as an insurer, we do have subrogated rights. I would step into your shoes, and any rights that you had, I would also have. So there are instances where we will pursue the previous owner. It just depends on the nature of claims. Tax claims. There are sometimes situations where there are unpaid taxes. There's not a lien on the property. The owner doesn't know that they exist. After closing, they find out that there's an outstanding tax balance that now is forming a lien on their property. We would step in those instances. We would make sure that that's paid, but we would have the right to go after the previous owner that should have paid those taxes. So short answer is yes, we do have the right to step into our insured's shoes and pursue any remedies that they would have.
All right, got it. Previous homeowners, don't do things illegally. Go through the city.
No one should do things illegally. That's the message.
Exactly. Now, what new at First Canadian Title are you guys working on? And especially with everything that's kind of been happening, is there any future things that you've got in the pipeline? I'm sure there's lots of things you guys are working on, but are there maybe a few things that you can kind of share to the listeners that you're adding additional value and protection?
So we are just on actually the verge of announcing some tools that we want to make readily available to our lawyers, to realtors that deal with us, to lenders that will help with identity verification. So we're really excited about that. And I wish I could announce that, but we're just trying to finalize some details there. But again, it's in our best interest, and it's in our focus is always on what's in the best interest of the customer. We have an obligation to protect them. So again, we're not here. We don't want these frauds to happen. We want to prevent them. We want to keep homeowners safe. This is the largest investment most people will ever make. So we want to make these tools that we have the privilege of being able to access more readily available. We're really trying to ensure that we increase awareness. Although title insurance is very commonplace in Ontario, as you move outside of Ontario, there isn't that same awareness. So how do we work with our valued partners, again, lawyers, realtors, lenders, to make sure that consumers are made aware of the opportunity to have title insurance? And then we're always working with our regulators and industry stakeholders to determine what other measures can we put in place as a financial services industry to make sure that we're always staying ahead of this, that we're collaborating with our partners, that we're introducing tools in market to help prevent these sorts of things. And, those would be our real goals. And today, we deal with lenders, we deal with lawyers, we deal with our insureds through our lawyer customers. And it's really just about awareness, sharing any tips. How do we make sure that people know what small things that they could do to incrementally help prevent these types of frauds?
Right. And so it sounds great. It sounds like you have some things that are in the pipeline. I do understand, obviously, that you can't say anything until you have those conversations with your lawyer and you're able to announce it. But if somebody is interested in learning, or at least knowing when it does get released, how can they kind of get on this? Is it a newsletter, or like how did that information get relayed to these to the clients and people who may be interested in learning more about what's happening?
Yeah, so certainly we will have all updates on our website, which is fct.ca, but I know it's not convenient for people to have to, I don't expect them to sit there every day and check our website. So we will be sharing information broadly through different vehicles. I will share it with you, and you can certainly share it with your listeners. But again, we will put out media posts. We will share the information through lawyers, through realtors, and through all of our partners, because we want people to be aware. We want people to be protected. We want people to feel safe. Like it's absurd to me that people have to worry about this. But again, it's not just about fraud, and it's really important. I don't want to overstate the frequency of fraud, but it does happen. And in the same way that, I don't worry every day that my home is going to burn down or that someone is going to break into my home, but I still buy home insurance. And because of all the coverages that are contained in the policy, I think everybody should have this. And it is a one-time premium. There's lots of information that we would love to share that's in our homeowner section of our policy. But again, we encourage you to speak to your lawyer, speak to your realtor, and we are also there for any questions that people have, either again by calling us or visiting our website, fct.ca.
Well, Daniela, listen, thank you so much for sharing all this great information. I know when the news broke and, a lot of people were calling me, they were concerned. And so I said, you know what, I think it makes sense for me to reach out to, I think, the best title insurer out there and
Yes.
the president of First Canadian Title to get it right from the top, to teach people how to protect themselves. And I think it sounds simple enough to get title insurance. That's really what it comes down to. And also to ensure that you're protecting your ID as best as you can, and following everything that we talked about in this particular podcast. So thank you for your time. Is there anything else that we didn't cover, or anything else that you'd like to share before we wrap things up?
No, I really want to thank you, because I think it is through collaboration in the industry that we can add value to people that rely on us for our expertise. So you're a trusted partner. People seek out your expertise, and the fact that you're taking the time to raise awareness, to make people aware of the things that they can do to help protect themselves, that is where you can add the most value to the people that you deal with. So thank you to you, and I commend you for your professionalism and the value that you add to your stakeholders and your clients. So I think the first thing is, again, just by talking about this, we will stop these things from happening. And again, I just think we all need to own this. So we need to make sure that we're doing our part to prevent this. But as a safety net, rely on your professionals, your lawyer, your realtors, and get title insurance, because you don't have to worry about it. It's there to protect you in case something happens. And I think it's, a worthwhile investment to protect the largest asset most of us have.
Okay, well, Daniela, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
What I'm going to do is I'll put all your contact information in the show notes below, the websites, and anything else that you want shared. And I appreciate
Thank
your
you.
time. Thank
That
you
was
so
a lot
much.
of fun. And if you ever have any questions, or if there's anything that I can do, don't hesitate to reach out to me.
Thank you so much. Have a great
Thank
day.
you. Have a great day. Take care.
You
Bye-bye.
too. Bye.